Welcome to Mountaineer Rants. We're here to go over the review of the TCU game. We played TCU
I'm
here
Paul.
in
This
Morgantown.
is Terry. For
How's it
those
going,
of you that haven't seen this before, and there's 2 or 3 that haven't.
No, but we're getting to all of them eventually. So,
West Virginia lost to TCU at home, 41-31 this past week. We're here to give you an analysis and an update on that.
yeah, it's one of those ones that's just so close. And I mean, you're playing a team that's so good, number 7 in the country, 7-0, and we had our chances. But
We jumped out to an early lead for those of you that didn't see the game, and scoring. We scored 7 in the first quarter, 14 in the second quarter, 3 in the third quarter, and 7 in the fourth quarter for a total of 31s. They scored 7, and in the second quarter scored 3 touchdowns, nothing in the third quarter, and 13 in the fourth quarter for 41. Our running back Donaldson got hurt again.
yeah.
He still had 104 yards rushing on 19 carries, and he had 2 touchdowns. Our first 2 times down the field, we got close to the goal line, kept running him into the line until we crossed the goal line. Very physical back, played well. Their back also,
Kendra Miller. Yeah, Kendra Miller's a good one.
he got 120 yards rushing on only 12 carries. And of course,
One of them was a 51-yard touchdown. And you know, our defense did play a whole lot better in that second half. It just wasn't enough, but we did play much better in the second half.
overall, I'm disappointed we lost, but I'm still proud of the team. I thought the team put in a lot of effort. We could have won the ball game against the top 10 team in the country. That doesn't make the sting any less, but big plays hurt us again. At least 4 plays by TCU went 50 yards or more. 3 of them went for touchdowns. One was a 71-yard touchdown pass to Tay Barber. One was a 55-yard touchdown to Johnson. And then our quarterback fumbled one in the second quarter at midfield. That led to another touchdown.
And that was a tough call, man. I the tuck rule, Tom Brady, if you remember back, he got the fumble called on. I thought he was going forward, but they took the ball from us. The officiating wasn't real good.
For those of you that didn't see it, it looked to me like his arm was coming forward. The ball went 10 or 12 yards downfield. Instead of ruling it as an incomplete pass, they called it a fumble.
And they gave it to TCU.
Nobody on the field was running. Even the player that recovered it got up and looked around like he thought it was an incomplete pass. They gave it to them, and that cost us a touchdown. With 4 minutes to go, West Virginia hit a 23-yard pass and made it 34-31. We were within 3 points with 4 minutes to go in the game. We kicked onside, but TCU got the onside kick, and it looked like they would put the icing on the cake. And Duggins for TCU threw an interception to Malachi Ruffin on our 16-yard line.
3 downs, they threw it on 4th down, and Ruffin got the interception. And I'm like, man, I think it was just about 4 minutes left then, because we had called timeouts. And I was like, man, we got the ball. We're down 3. This is perfect. I said, we're going to go down and win this game.
Get into field goal range. We tie it. You're at home. Yeah, I liked our chances even then. But we went 3 and out.
Didn't
It was one of those our last 2 possessions, we went 3 and out. Our offense just sputtered. And then right at the end of the game, Duggan for TCU on 4th down with 20 seconds to go, he threw the ball to one of his receivers. He had receiver Williams, and they scored a touchdown, and that's why it looks like they beat us worse than they did. It was a 3-point game right up till the end.
Well, you know, the bad thing is nothing against the offense, because they've carried us pretty much all year, but they did let us down right then. But again, we put 31 points up on them. They averaged 44 a game. We held them below their average by 3 points, but
and 7 of that was a last-minute pass. Otherwise, we did a pretty good job on defensively. And then we normally score 35 points per game. We came up short with 31, but those last 2 dead drives are what killed us.
It's a killer.
They normally only allow their opponents 26 points, so we exceeded that. This is against the top 10 team, folks. And there's nothing about TCU that looks like they're phonies. They're 8-0. They may have been through the toughest part of their schedule already.
They're pretty good. They still got to play Texas, I believe, which might be interesting, but they're pretty good.
And let's add in, we had 2 injured linemen We were shuffling linemen in and out. We had injured running backs all over the place.
Mathis was out. Johnson was not at full health, and I can't believe that Donaldson was at full health. He's still coming back from the concussion. And
he left
and
the
he
game,
got hurt. He went
came
out.
back in, got hurt again, and now I
Apparently got hurt
understand
pretty
he's
bad.
out for the season.
That's my understanding.
So they
too.
beat us up
Neither
pretty
one of our starting guards, neither Nestor nor Gamitter, were there. So we had Remack, and we did have Jordan White back, but that's a change too.
And that's important because this West Virginia team likes to run the ball. When your running backs are out and when your linemen are out, it limits you, and the other team knows what's coming. It happens. It sucks. It was the number 7 team in the country. I'm disappointed, but I'm not embarrassed. I believe in this team. I like this team.
I agree with you.
One of the people who we want to recognize some of the folks that have called
Yes,
call
yes.
and
Call and give us comments and stuff like that. Yeah, one of them was Steve Pisacchio. First of all, thank you for all your loyal comments. I appreciate it. Your insights
Pisacchio
very
is
good.
a football expert.
Yeah,
man. If
he's
you
really
haven't read
sharp.
the comments by Pisacchio, check him out. We need to get him in here as a guest.
Other than he likes Ohio State, I'm still not worried about that
but
whole
he's so
thing.
pretty. He'd look good on the camera.
But I do, Steve. I do enjoy your comments. Thank you. Keep them coming. We had another one from Kuz's Corner, and if you don't know who that is, he does a podcast or a YouTube channel, and he does Mountaineer stuff too from the hills of West Virginia. And I appreciate you talking to us.
He's a Mountaineer fan. He's
is.
He's a thoughtful guy. He does his homework. He has lots of followers. I saw his latest one, maybe what I think is his second to latest one.
Mm-hmm.
He does one, I think, on the Big 12
The media thing.
media contract.
Right.
But he also had Avon Coburn, a former Mountaineer running back, on there as a guest. Those guys were pretty good. They give good insight. He's getting better each week as a broadcaster. If you're interested, we'll put the link to his podcast in the description below.
And we appreciate you. And thanks for the comment. And thanks for the subscription. And more of you ought to like and subscribe. This guy
Feel
believes
free
in
to
him.
put our link in your description as too.
Absolutely.
And yeah, we're available for guest appearances, but you have to go through our agent.
Yes, sir.
Now, last week we did one we teased about piling on, because it's real easy when a team is losing just to pile on and pick on everything about them. I'm a critical fan, and I always have some ideas. I want to second guess the play calling and the coaches and the players and all
And
that
the way
kind of
they
stuff.
play. And I'm with
So let's pile on just a little bit here. In my opinion, this team is inconsistent. The team that played against Baylor was good from top to bottom. The running backs, the quarterbacks, the line, the secondary, the tackles, the special teams.
made plays.
And a week later against Texas Tech, it was average or below from top to bottom. Now, some people will say that's home and away. Some people will say, I don't know what it is.
But did you see Baylor went down to Texas Tech and beat the snot out of them?
beat the
Picked
hell
them
out
off 5 times and beat them very badly. And I was like, wow, that team we beat in Baylor was a pretty good team.
But the Mountaineers are inconsistent. I don't know what I think. That's when you're inconsistent. I think it's focus. I could be wrong. We all say that home team gives you a few more points because you sleep in your own bed or whatever it is. We know psychological adds to your
crowd.
game or detracts.
Noise.
We need to have a good crowd. We need to have good social media. We need to have good fans if we're going to fix that. But I'm just being critical now. I'll talk about fixing it later. The secondary is killing us. The secondary is allowing big plays. It ranks way down there. Some of those players are not very good. They're and our offense and our special teams, they're not good enough to offset the inconsistencies in the bad secondary.
And it's a shame because we probably have the best offense we've had since Neil Brown's been the coach here. But there's no question we got the worst defense that we've had since Neil Brown's been the coach here.
If you're going to jump on the team, you have to look back and say, we lost a pretty good defensive coach when there was a controversy that went on to social media instead of being taken up inside. Then we ended up losing that coach, and we lost the kid that put the stuff on the social media. So I don't know who benefited from that.
Not the university and not the Mountaineers, apparently. So.
In case for those of you that are from Pitt or got a Pitt education, that means I'm not crazy about negative comments about my team on social media. Let's do stuff constructive. But let's talk. We've got a coach now that's struggling. He's got a number of defensive players that are not very good. They frequently are out of position. They frequently are following a receiver 2 yards behind them and trailing the receiver instead of being close to him. And maybe that can't be fit. And they don't tackle. And we were just talking about that the other day. When was the last time you saw in one of these games a West Virginia football player, especially a secondary player, knock somebody down, really put a big hit on him? We're not seeing enough of that.
It doesn't happen, and that's why maybe the violence is not there. I don't know what it is, but I haven't seen a really good hit from a Mountaineer all season long, and maybe I'm just not looking. I don't know. But
my concern is that maybe they're busy worrying about their assignment and they're not just playing wild and free. Guys, relax, play football. You're good enough to play football. It's just this hit, just this guy. When the ball's up in the air, your thoughts ought to be mine. That's mine. I don't care if you're the receiver. I don't care if you're the defensive guy. I don't care if you're the special teams guy waiting for the catch. The ball's in the air. Nothing else should matter. Not what formula you're in, not who's behind you. The ball. That's it. And that's another thing. Special teams, especially in the beginning of the season, they're dropping the ball. You can't, and they make poor decisions coming out of the end zone on some of our receivers. That's my piling on. Now, if I want to pile on a little bit more, I would say that our quarterback dazzled me in the first 4 or 5 games, was pretty average, maybe even below average in this last game.
The last 2 games, I think there's something wrong. I think he's got something wrong with his arm. He got it hit down there at Texas Tech, and it doesn't appear that he's throwing the ball the way he has. But maybe I'm wrong, and I don't know.
Well, I hope it is. That can be fixed.
That would explain it. But
our
I
line
agree
is
with you. He's not
our
been real
offensive
good.
line is inconsistent again. But again, we've got injured players. Our running backs are injured. All those things can be fixed. Now let's talk about the positive, because I like this team. I think we have one of the better quarterbacks we've had in a long time. You have to go back to Will Greer to see a quarterback that matches this one. And I think this one can be better than Greer if he gets consistent. I think our quarterback room is better than it's been since I can remember. We have 3 guys or 4 guys waiting, any one of which was better than what we've done in the past. I'm excited about that. Our running backs are excellent. We don't just have one running back. We have 4 of them, and they're all good. Now they're fighting injuries, but they're all good. This is on an upswing here. Our line, despite the fact that sometimes it's inconsistent, may be the best offensive line I've seen since the days of Dana Holgerson, and who was the quarterback? Skyler Howard.
We had an All-American center.
We had an All-American center back then. But this offensive line, and this line's young. This is a very good offensive line, as good as anything in the Big 12. I like our receivers. I was agnostic about it a couple of years, but
we need more players there.
We've got receivers that have potential to be very good, and some smatterings of excellent plays in them, and the younger ones have high potential as well. They're not there yet, but they're solid and can be solid. I love our defensive line. It's as good as any line we've had, except maybe the one we had last year, and I think it's probably comparable. Our linebackers are solid. They're not great, but they're solid. Our special teams are getting better. Our secondary is getting better. I think the team needs to be consistent, and I think I think focus on some of the things that can be fixed. What other things do I have to offer?
Well, let me, before you start that, may I just get a little aside here? I put a little research together here today, and I was thinking to myself about coaches that started out a little rocky in their careers. And I said, well,
People don't stick with them, you mean?
yeah, and maybe particularly nowadays you got the social media, you got a lot of people. It's an immediate world, so they don't really want to hang in there. And I thought there's this one coach who was at Wisconsin. He came in 1990. In his first 3 years, he was 11-22. Now, can you imagine if we were 11-22?
He's only won a third of his game.
Right, and so
Losing
it is
season.
it is the Big Ten, which is a pretty good conference. The next 13 years, he went 106-52-2. I mean, I know they're allowed to tie. A lot of you might not understand. They used to allow tie games. Barry Alvarez, he was the defensive coordinator at Notre Dame, got the Wisconsin job. Now he's the athletic director at Wisconsin.
So they stuck with
They
him.
stuck with him after
3
11
years,
and 22 for
and
the
then
first
they
3
were
years.
well rewarded with it.
How about this one? This coach went down to coach a team that was in the Big East back then in 1987, so I'm going back a ways. His first 6 years, his record was 24-40-2. 24 wins, 40 losses, 2 ties, 6 seasons.
Losing
Would you
record
keep him?
over-
Would you keep him? Do we need him? Well, they did, and then he went 18 more years, went 174-56. And he
Wow.
actually played in the national championship game against Florida State. This is Frank Beamer from Virginia Tech, and he put that school on the map, basically.
I knew Beaver had a rough beginning, and they stuck with him.
He went 6 years. He only won 24 games in 6 years.
Yep.
Are you kidding me? Would
And
that,
he
that
was-
wouldn't? Would that happen today? Can it
He
happen
was
today?
one of the best things that happened to Virginia Tech. He put Virginia Tech on the map. That's
Exactly.
that's exactly right.
Exactly. So now, okay, well, maybe I'm going way back, right? I'm 1990.
Give us something more current.
How about 2013? This coach comes in the Southeastern Conference. His first 4 years, he goes 19-30. 19-30. 4 years. We got a coach that's been there 4 years, right? He's 20-22, I think, right now, as our head coach. Next 5 years, 37-22 has been his record since then. In a really good conference, probably as good or better than the Big 12. I'm talking about Mark Stoops from Kentucky. He probably, a big part of it, got the job because of his brother, but he's doing a good job. And if you look at the Kentucky program right now, they're held in high esteem, and he's a very good coach. So they didn't boot him out when he was 19-30. That's all I'm saying. Is our coach going to go on to have a career like them? I don't know.
We're not going to talk about our
But,
coach. We're just going to
but
talk
I'm just
about
going to tell
social
you,
media
sometimes you
and-
got to be patient.
and people that quit, and we're not going to quit.
We
That's
are not
what
going to
we're
quit,
doing.
that's
Now,
for sure. Not these
reading-
fans.
Reading from the Holy Book of Nayland.
No, don't call it a holy book.
Don Nayland, the Hall of Fame coach, and one time the president of the College Football Coaches Association, and Mountaineer coach, until we decided 7 wins wasn't good enough, and we ran
Somebody
him off.
mentioned that book last week, I think.
He wrote this book called "I'm Nobody Special," and there were a couple of passages in there I thought might be relevant to our situation now. In chapter 12, he says, "When I coached at Bowling Green, I was one of the best organized coaches in America. I was organized to the nth degree because that's what I thought it took to win. I had agendas for meetings, and everything would be listed 1, 2, 3, 4 right down the line. My coaches had copies of the agenda prior to the meetings. They knew exactly what I did, what's going on. So did my players, everything down the line." As I look back, he said those meetings were probably pretty boring. He says, "I don't do that stuff anymore." He says, "I go into a meeting, I might have a few things listed that I want my coaches to know, but there's also some other things I don't want them to know. Let them figure it out for their own. I want them to think, what's this guy Nayland up to?"
Okay, so did that first part of that you were talking about, does that remind you of anybody? I don't know. You all be the judge. Give us a comment and they'll let us know if it reminds you of anyone.
Nayland goes on to say, "I finished reading a book about Bear Bryant, and I thought nobody ever knew what that guy was going to do." And it's the same with Bo Schembechler, who was Nayland's hero. He said, "No one at Michigan is quite sure what he was going to do next." I think if you follow the rules all the time and the percentages all the time, it's not logical. It's actually logical to be illogical occasionally. Nayland said something else which I think may apply to this team, just maybe. He says, the main thing to do with the players is to love them. They all need love. He says the next area is motivation, is the challenge. He says, I do it in subtle ways. He says, if I see a player in the offseason, I might say to him, I hear we don't have much chance to win next year because people tell me the Pitts, Penn States, Boston Colleges are all working harder on their strength program than we are. He said in the 1981 Peach Bowl against Florida, Florida had a big defensive tackle named David Galloway. By the way, that Peach Bowl was considered the lock game of the year.
We were there. That was great.
We went to it. Neyland not only beat Florida in the lock game of the year, he started the next season beating Oklahoma in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Anyway, he said, we had an offensive tackle named Keith Jones who was going to have the task of trying to block David Galloway. He said, I would go up to him at a team meeting and say, Keith, you know, you're a senior. You had a nice career. You got to play against this Galloway. You're a nice guy. We don't want you to go out there and get hurt. Nobody will know this Galloway is going to beat up on you like we know he's going. So if you think about it and let me know, it'll be all right if you turn in your uniform. I'll understand.
He told him he was going, just go ahead and quit.
He said, just go ahead and quit. He said, before long, Keith Jones was snorting. He said, by the day of the game, he was ready to eat nickels. And Jones, by the way, beat a clearly superior tackle because he was motivated.
He said it even as some of the other players were saying, I see Jones is still out here. I thought he had quit yet by now. Yeah, so Neyland knew how to motivate. Exactly.
Stir these guys up. Get them focused. This is and again, guys, your social media may be dragging our players
It's
down.
not helping.
We don't quit. We're Mountaineers. We don't quit. And we got 4 games we can win before this season's over, and I think the Mountaineers can win every doggone one of them. Thank you, Coach. I hope Coach Neyland's watching, and if he's not, I hope he's watching in the game.
I was going to say,
quote is in it. I don't know if his book's still for sale, but it's called "I'm Nobody Special." It's a hell of a good read. He's got a couple others out.
I was going to just quote one other coach, and then forgive me, but Bum Phillips used to coach the Houston Oilers way back a long time ago. Said there's 2 kind of players that you can't win with. One is the one that won't listen to anything you say. The other one is the one that listens to everything you say. He said you got to have one of them. He says to know when to not listen to the coach and do what they think is best. And I think
said that smooth.
Yeah. I think sometimes we get caught up, and I think our coaching staff tries to just lay this formulaic stuff on them, and trying to
Discipline
go with
is good. Saying. Playing not to lose is good. Trying to avoid mistakes is good. You've got to do all of that stuff.
But let's go get it.
Let's go get them, guys. You are as good. I don't care what the media says. I don't care what the record says. I don't care what the wins and losses say. I've seen this team play. I've seen the teams we're going to play. You can beat every last one of them.
Beat all 4.
Just get focused. You're the ones that run the show, not the social media, not the coaches, not us. You're the ones that run the show. We're all Mountaineers. With that, I'm going to encourage you to like and subscribe our viewership. If you want to, check out Couz's Corner, buy Neyland's book, whatever other advertisement we got to sell.
Like, subscribe, and share. We will see you next time. Thank you so much.